All right, joining us now, and I've been looking forward to having him on because a lot of connections, and I listen every morning, and I'm a big fan. Whether he's on with Ari or if Ari's got Tony Casillas on as he did today, and George is a good friend. He's on this program quite often, but Dave Archer is the regular guy in the morning, Big 12 this morning on Sirius XM, former Iowa State quarterback. In fact, not long after I was a walk-on at Oklahoma State, he was a junior college All-American that came in and played quarterback for the Iowa State Cyclones. And Dave joins us now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good to be with you. You know, that whole description of the barbecue there, man. I'm gonna have to pull off and get something to eat. I mean, you got me starving now.
Well, let me tell you something. This place, every trucker that goes up and down I-35 from Minnesota all the way down to Brownsville, Texas, or down to the point there at the bottom of Texas, down there by where Texas Pan American is, they all know this stop. I mean, they come in here and it's rustic, looks like a cabin on the inside, and like I said, KC has his own smokehouse. It's a pretty it's a pretty good place. You'd like this. Hey, the one of the cool things, I don't know if you realize this, your junior college alma mater, Snow Community College, but the head coach there now at Snow Community College is Andrew Mitchell, a
Right?
former offensive lineman at Oklahoma State. And I told you one of my really good friends, Alex Golish, is on the staff with Matt Campbell at Iowa State. So I got good friends at places you played at. And I root
Yeah,
for them.
it is cool. That is a small world.
I'm going to start with something. I kind of went on a rant last segment. It's a regular rant, and I know you guys discuss it some. I am really waiting for Bill Hancock, and you probably remember Bill Hancock when you played at Iowa State. I think he was one of the assistant commissioners of the Big Eight, and
Yeah, I think you're right.
Bill is in Bill's in charge of the college football playoff. He's got a very important, powerful position where he can influence some of the things going on. It's really bothering me that the two teams that are kind of owning the national championship, or the two conferences, SEC and the ACC, play one less conference game than the Big 12, the Big 10, and the Pac 12. And I don't know how you feel about it, but especially when you play that game late in the year, a lightweight game late in the year can really make a difference for a football team.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. We talked about this. There's got to be some uniformity to the scheduling, to where you're comparing apples to apples, because if you're not having to play at least 10 Power 5 teams, then it's a disservice to the teams that are. I mean, West Virginia's playing 11 Power 5 teams this year on their schedule, one of three teams in the country, and everybody across the Big 12 is gonna line up and play Power 5 teams. So why not have that across the board? I couldn't agree with you more. I think that it's something they are looking at. We talked to Commissioner Bowlesby within the Big 12. We talked to a number of the ADs across the Big 12, and they're certainly part of, if you want to call it an agenda, or certainly some message pushed, that's where they need to get to. Because, I mean, you look at the SEC, yeah, it's a gauntlet of teams you have to run through, but then you sprinkle in 3 or 4 games where you're playing Alabama A&M, it makes it far more difficult than when you look at teams that are scheduling outside the conference, like going to Oregon State or wherever it may be to play another Power 5 school. So I just think that if you want to do some comparisons and you want to be able to draw some lines as to who deserves to be in and who doesn't, then it's got to start with scheduling, and I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I really wish a message would get sent that direction. I had a chance to talk to your producer, Ryan, but every time I walked over there, you and Ari were deep in conversation with either some players or some of the Big 12 coaches, or Holly was over there. Coming out of Arlington, and I've been able to hear a lot of them on tape, some of the replayed shows. for one, Mike Gundy gave y'all. He gave you guys a.
He
You know,
was
Mike is
great.
either on or he's not interested. He was interested with you guys.
Yeah, he really was. I really enjoyed talking to Mike. Mike came into Oklahoma State right after I left Iowa State. So, Rusty Hilger was quarterback at Oklahoma State when I was there, and then a couple years later, Gundy came in. Of course, Gundy rewrote the record books and did what he did. But so I think we had a little bit of a connection there because we were kind of from the same era, and so it was fun to talk to him. But yeah, if he is rolling, and I know what you're talking about, I've heard times when he's been a little bit standoffish, but for the most part, fun guy to talk to, has a tremendous passion for the game, has a tremendous passion for Oklahoma State, and it comes across in when he speaks. And I know he's excited about this year, and I know you guys have probably talked at length about how transparent he's been this off season about how he just didn't feel like he was as engaged as he needed to be. And he talked a lot about that. And he doesn't hide his feelings about what's going on with the transfer portal and things like that. So he was a lot of fun to talk to, and tremendous football coach. His record across the board cannot be denied. He's one of the really good college football coaches in the land.
And Dave, you guys got into this a little bit with him about his son. When he took the job, and I've covered Mike, I was at Channel 4 as a sportscaster and reporter when he was in high school at Midwest City and covered him there. And his dad, Ray, is a character, and he's a good friend of mine. And I've watched his kids grow up. When he took that job, when Les Miles left, I went up to him because he had one son, Gavin, at that time, and he and his wife Kristen went on to have Gunner and Gage. Gage is a 14-year-old freshman, also a quarterback, but Gunner's going into his senior year. And the day he took the job, I said, "Hey, look, I know how important this job is, and it is, but don't ever let it keep you from being a dad." And I think Mike would even tell you that last year, he probably, being a dad, may have taken away a little bit from being the head football coach. And I think he's got that, like you said, I think he's got that back in balance now. But it's awful hard, with a kid following in your footstep. And Gunner has handled it well. But he's worked with Tom House in California, and Gunner's a lefty. And I know he doesn't have many offers right now, but one Big 12 coordinator told me that he was the best quarterback he saw in the month of May when he was out on evaluations.
Wow.
And because he's Mike's kid, I think some schools are kind of skittish to even recruiting.
Yeah, that may be the case. That's got to be difficult. And my dad was not a coach, he was a life coach, but he certainly wasn't a football coach that was with me day in and day out, and then having to treat me like other kids on the team and make sure that there wasn't some kind of preferential treatment handed down. All those things that go along, the pitfalls of being a coach and then having your son play for you. But then there's also the great value of being able to share that time. I think about the times that I've gone to do college football games, cover games, and call games, and the times that I missed not being with my kids. Maybe I missed a high school football game, or maybe I missed, something they were doing. And so he would get to share that opportunity. So there is some positives attached to it. And yeah, give Gunner a ton of credit for how he's handled this situation too, because it's not easy being recruited by a personality, or at least be associated with a personality like Mike. I mean, Mike's one of those real, when you could pick 10 coaches across the country, Mike could be on the list as far as the personalities and the guys that you kind of want to hear a soundbite from, or you want to be around because he's going to potentially say something or do something. So there's a lot of notoriety brought to that, and you're his kid. So a lot of things go into it. But so give Mike and Gunner a ton of credit for the way they've handled it. And there's been a ton of quarterbacks through the years that have kind of been laying in the weeds. Iowa State's got a kid right now that was laying in the weeds for them. Brock Purdy was a kid that was not highly recruited, and some teams got in on him late in his recruiting process. He ultimately was recruited pretty early by Iowa State and Matt Campbell, but Alabama and some of those teams got in on him. So it's because Gunner's not being recruited very heavily right now, or is not on the lips of a lot of people right now. doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to be a guy that can light it up. So I think that he's handled his business real well, and I give Mike a lot of credit for trying to balance it. And it's got to be difficult. You got to walk a mile in a guy's shoes to understand what Mike had to do last year and what he's had to do balancing his family, which all of them do. But with kids that are football players, it's a little bit different as well.
Yeah, my kid is the head coach up at NEO Junior College. He wants Gunner to follow in your footsteps. He wants Gunner, if he doesn't find what he gets or doesn't like what he gets, to go up to NEO, start for a year, light it up, and then he says, hey, then you'll be able to move on somewhere and just go straight into a starting position at a four-year school. So he's already made that pitch, and I told him, I think you're going to lose on that one. I think Gunner's going to end up somewhere. Hey,
that's a hell of a program, though.
Yeah.
NEO's a hell of a program. Scott Case, I played with Scott. Scott played at Oklahoma, and Scott and I were here in Atlanta. They won a national championship in NEO when he was there.
Yeah, and he's taken an interesting path. He went straight from playing at Oklahoma State to NEO as a dorm coach and just worked his way up. He's 10 years into his career, and he's in his second year as a head coach there. And like I said, he's got good friends at different places. Alex Grinch, the new defensive coordinator at OU, is a good friend of his. And like I mentioned, Alex Golish and Matt Campbell and those guys. Hey, a couple of things I want to hit before we let you go. I kind of got off with the Mike Gundy stuff. But while you were in Arlington, and I know it's hard, you'd rather watch tape of a team, but just from the vibes you got from players and coaches, did anything change your mind, and what'd you come out thinking?
I think that I got a little bit more of a feel for Matt Wells at Texas Tech. I talked to Matt a few times on the phone. I'd never really been around him personally. It was fun to visit with him. I had a couple of casual moments while he was there where we weren't at AT&T Stadium, just back at the hotel, where I got a chance to talk to Coach Wells. I came away extremely impressed with his passion, what the game means to him. He shared some private thoughts about what he thinks about Alan Bowman, and sometimes coaches are maybe a little bit reserved or a little bit quiet, or maybe they're over the top when how they talk about a player. I think that Matt has been a really good job of kind of keeping things in perspective for Bowman coming off an injury. But when I got a chance to talk to him privately, he raved about this kid, about some things, some innate things he's got built into him that maybe have not come to light yet, that might take him to another level this year if he can stay on the field for the Red Raiders. That was one that was kind of impressive. I was really impressed with the Baylor kids and how Matt Rule's got it rolling there, and how the optimism there is really through the roof after all the things that university kind of put themselves through the years with Art Briles and all that kind of stuff. Matt Rule's really done a nice job of rebuilding the Bears in their persona, or certainly how they feel about themselves. And then just was impressed with all the kids across the board that represented their schools, whether it was Tylan Wallace or whether it was Marcel Spears for Iowa State. It didn't matter who it was. It just seemed like they all were very buttoned up, very dialed in, and had a lot of respect for their schools. It wasn't about me or I want to do this. I thought it was pretty cool. They were kind of pretty much down the pike. Everybody was concerned about their teammates, their brothers, and what they did and how they represented their schools. I thought it was really a great representation of all 10 Big 12 representatives.
Yeah, a couple of things that are just fun questions that I wanted to ask Dave Archer from SiriusXM, also the color voice on the Atlanta Falcons. We'll get to that in just a second. But you played, like you said, Rusty Hilger was the quarterback. I guess Jimmy Johnson and maybe I don't know, Pat Jones was over there too. I have to ask if you ever looked over on the other sideline when you were playing Oklahoma State and saw any of the antics or the facial expressions of Pat Jones, because gosh knows, Pat Jones was one of the funnest coaches to watch on the sideline.
You know what? I don't think I ever really paid attention to what Pat was doing over there. Certainly was aware and very conscious of the fact of the great coaching that was going on that sideline. But I was so concerned about what they were doing to me defensively. They were tough on defense when we were in the when we were in the Big Eight playing against Oklahoma State, whether it was in Stillwater at our place. I just remember they handed me my rear end 2 years in a row when we played them. We played OU tough 1 or 2 games. We played. We were able to move the ball up and down the field on Nebraska. They were number 1 in the country, but Oklahoma State beat the hell out of us on defense. They just, for whatever reason, we couldn't block them, and I was constantly running around trying to stay alive. So I didn't have time to look over the sideline. I'm trying to avoid I was trying to avoid Cowboys trying to throw me on the ground.
Were you there when they instituted the multicolored helmets?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah,
yes, I was there for that.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I heard you bashing the White Sox one day about wearing shorts, and I'm thinking, was Archer there when they wore those different color helmets, red and gold? And okay,
I was hoping,
never mind. I'm not
gonna remember that. You had to bring that up, right? Yeah, that was the brainchild of Jim Kreiner, who was the head coach at Iowa State. My senior came in from Boise State, and he had this wild idea that if you played in his mind at all Big Eight level, you'd be distinguished by wearing a red helmet as opposed to the gold helmet everybody else wore. So all it did was put a bullseye on my head, on Tracy Henderson's head, a couple of our defensive players. It was ridiculous. Yeah, it was not a good idea.
All right, last thing, because you also have another job besides Sirius XM as the color voice of the Atlanta Falcons, which are a fun team to watch. I mean, you got talent at quarterback, you got Jones at receiver. I mean, the Falcons are a fun team to watch. And the guy you partner with, Wes Durham, happens to be the guy I work with on the Cowboy Network, our play-by-play voice, Dave Hunziker. Wes Durham's kind of like his number one mentor. He talks to Wes all the time. We're actually kind of revamping our pregame show a little bit, and I know Dave has studied the Falcons pregame shows. But yeah, you know, Dave Hunziker would tell me to tell Dave Archer, "God, you're lucky. You get to work with Wes Durham."
Yeah, see, I tell Wes all the time, boy, you're really lucky you get to work with Dave Archer all the time. That must be a nice deal for you. Wes is amazing. He is as good as there is in any realm when it comes to broadcasting, so that's a good one for Dave to kind of pattern himself after and talk with. But, yeah, it's a lot of fun to work on Sundays with Wes, and we do have a fun team to talk about, and we got arguably the best receiver core in the league and one of the best quarterbacks, maybe an unsung guy, even though he gets paid. Nobody wants to talk about him as one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and Matt Ryan, just a team guy, and got a bunch of guys coming back from injury. I'm just actually returning from Flowery Branch, where the Falcons have their training camp now. Just got through watching practice, and they're in day 3 of training camp. We play in that early game, that Hall of Fame game. Here's one for you. I'd like you to try to figure out for me. Maybe you can argue this one with some fans when I get off. Is why in the world of safety in football, why in the world does the NFL have a team playing 5 preseason games? The Broncos will play the Falcons in a 5th preseason game. When all the talk about security and safety of players, why would you have a team play a 5th preseason game when all you have to do is build the Hall of Fame game into the 4 preseason games? That's one of your 4 preseason games. Make it the first preseason game of the year. But why is it a 5th preseason game? I'll have no idea. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, but Wes and I will be in Canton, Ohio, a week from Thursday, calling Broncos Falcons.
No, it is, and I think they play too many anyway. I'm with the players. I think they should cut it down to 2 or 3 preseason games, and that's whether the owners decide to heap some more games on the back end of the regular season or not. I will say this: I was just in Canton, Ohio, a couple of weeks ago, and if you haven't been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame lately, I hadn't been since I was 10 years old, and I used to live in Ohio. It's pretty impressive. And that stadium, I know they had a few years ago the game that was canceled because of the turf, but the turf is nice, and that's got to be the nicest, mostly high school football stadium in the country with suites. And my wife was with me, and she looked and she goes, "Wow, I thought we had good high school football stadiums in Oklahoma." And I said, "Yeah, honey." And yeah, this is impressive. We also went over to Massillon and just to look at Paul Brown Stadium and the home of the Massillon Tigers, which is, I'm a football historian and I love that kind of stuff. So, and And I can tell you this: as we were leaving, because it's not the best part of Massillon, there were 4 cop cars that came streaming by us, screaming by us with lights and sirens. And they still have, I remember this when I was a kid in Ohio, they still on the police cars have City of Champions written on the side of the police car. So
Nice,
there you go.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, that was your police
Hey, have
escort. That was
fun.
your escort.
Ha- have fun in Canton and listen to you guys all the time. And I've told Ryan anytime he needs me to talk what's going on here in Oklahoma State and Stillwater. But it's great to have you on, and good luck with all your seasons. You're playing college and pro every year, so good luck with it.
Well, I sure appreciate it. It's great to be on with you, and I look forward to having you on our show. And you guys have a great year, too. Look forward to it.
All right, thanks, Dave. Dave Archer, former Iowa State NFL quarterback with the Eagles and the Falcons and Washington, and played some in the Canadian League as well. He's well versed.